basically the law of sowing and reaping applies in marriage like every other law, and it's really a law that we depend on for life. Sowing and reaping means that whatever we sow, positive or negative, then we, reap the consequences of that. As simple a thing as if I'm hungry, I'm lying on the couch and I'm hungry, and I sow behavior and I sow effort to go to the fridge and make myself a sandwich, I reap the benefit of what I sowed, right? I put in work, I got a sandwich. I go to work, I get a paycheck. All right, it's a very positive thing. In marriage, sowing and reaping, if you sow into your marriage with love and kindness and forgiveness and patience and long suffering and affection and tenderness and care and strength and sacrifice, sow those things into your marriage, and you are apt to reap all of the good effects of that. Now, the other side of sowing and reaping is true as well. If I'm on the couch and I want something to eat and I don't sow into doing anything about that, then I'm going to reap hunger, right? If I don't go to work, that's what I sow, then I'm going to reap no paycheck. Well, in marriage, if we're not sowing good things or if we're sowing bad things, then we're going to reap that. Okay? If I'm sowing sarcasm and judgment and isolation and contempt and pettiness and all of that, then that's going to come back into the marriage. It's going to be a reaping there. So that's kind of the big sense of this. Now, it goes past that, though, in the individual aspect of it, of holding each other accountable with good boundaries for our behavior. For example, sowing and reaping says the one who's got the problem should reap the consequences. Now, here's what happens in codependent marriages. Let's take addiction, for example. Say somebody has a substance abuse problem. Well, they're sowing that behavior, but the law of sowing and reaping is broken down because they're being the drunk, but the family is reaping the consequences. See, the person that's sowing is not reaping because there aren't any boundaries. So when the family says, look, we're reaping a lot of pain here because you're not taking responsibility for your addiction, then what they do is they stand up and say, look, it's your problem. You've got to go get treatment or there's going to be reaping consequences of that. I'm not going to live with you as long as you're using drugs. Or I'm not going to be able to be in the same house with you if you're physically threatening me. See, sowing and reaping also makes sure that the person that's got the behavior is reaping the consequences of that, so they have to deal with it. So it really gets into the aspect of, especially in extremely dysfunctional families, of setting limits on destructive behavior. And where you're saying that drug abuse, that rage problem, that physical abuse, that spending us into bankruptcy, all that stuff, we're going to set a limit because we're reaping the consequences of your out-of-control behavior. And that's why the Bible says, like Matthew 18 and other places, to go contain that and make sure the person with the problem is dealing with the problem. Very important.